Sasha Rodina was a 7-year-old boy who was born and raised in the city of Rostov in Russia. He was born on December 9, 2008, and was the son of Maria Rodina, a single mother who at the time of the events was 26 years old. As for his father, there is no information about him. The boy, for most of his life, was raised by his grandmother, who took care of him as best she could. According to family members and people close to Sasha, he was considered a very good and studious boy. He loved kindergarten, where he used to play a lot with his classmates. In 2015, Sasha's mother, Maria Rodina, met a 21-year-old man online named Vladimir Efimov. The two talked for a few months, until they decided to meet in person. Unlike most people who prefer to get to know each other better in a relationship before making any important decision, Maria and Vladimir, from that first meeting, decided that they would live together. They then rented a house and later moved in together. Therefore, in January 2016, Maria moved to Saratov, a city with just over 900,000 inhabitants located in southeastern Russia. However, this city is more than 497 miles from Rostov, which was the city where Maria lived with her mother and son Sasha. As a result, although Maria did not participate much in raising her son, as it was her mother who took care of the boy, as I already mentioned, she decided that she did not want to be away from him, and so she took him with her to live in the house that she and Vladimir had rented. According to family members, Sasha was very happy and excited about the move, and even though his new home was very far from his grandmother's house, the boy made a naive promise to her, saying that he would visit her whenever he could. The boy was also very happy to meet Vladimir, his mother's boyfriend, and soon started calling him father, since until that moment Vladimir was the first father figure in Sasha's life. Everything was going very well in the life of the newly formed family. It is said that Vladimir was a kind, polite, and helpful man, but in less than a month, this happy family scenario changed. Before moving from Rostov, Maria had taken out several loans from the city's banks to pay for her new house, furniture, and travel. In her head, she thought that as soon as she arrived in Saratov, she would get a job, since the city is big and has many job opportunities. However, time passed, her money ran out, and Maria was unable to find a job, and this generated some friction between her and Vladimir. The relationship between the newlywed couple was no longer very good, as they argued frequently, and the biggest reason for these arguments was little Sasha. According to sources, as Sasha was practically raised by his grandmother, Maria didn't know how to deal with the boy, and anything he did irritated her and also Vladimir. Thus, in the first few days of caring for the boy, the couple decided that to re-educate him, they would raise him using their own methods. Sasha was deprived of going to school. He couldn't eat the things he liked, much less leave the house to play. And if that wasn't enough, anything he did was a reason for Vladimir to punish him in the worst ways you can imagine. Just to give you an idea, on one of these occasions, Vladimir would have taken a sharp object and made several cuts on the boy's body while telling him about his desire to take his life. On March 14, 2016, Vladimir was angrier than usual, and to feel better, he decided to take out all his anger and frustration on little Sasha. But every time Vladimir beat or subjected the boy to every kind of unimaginable and absurd punishment possible, he enjoyed it and felt good about it. Thus, Vladimir did not want to stop, and mistreated the boy for 4 days in a row from March 14th to 18th. For all these days, Maria witnessed all of her son's suffering and did nothing. She was completely complicit in what Vladimir was doing. When it was on the morning of March 18th, Maria tried to give Sasha a bath, who, because he was very injured, started crying, and she, irritated, told him to be quiet without even caring about his injuries. While she was trying to bathe the boy, Vladimir, who had gone for a walk, returned home and ordered Maria to prepare breakfast for him. In the meantime, Vladimir entered the bathroom where Sasha was and started hitting him for no reason, and then left. When Maria returned to bathe the boy, she noticed that he was unconscious and not breathing, and it was only then that she decided to seek help and call emergency services. The paramedics quickly went to the family's home, but as soon as they arrived, they realized there was nothing more they could do, and right there, they certified little Sasha's death. Upon seeing the countless bruises and injuries on the boy's body, the paramedics questioned Maria and Vladimir about what had happened to him, and the two began to make up excuses, saying that he had hurt himself playing. The paramedics, who weren't stupid or anything, knew that those bruises and wounds didn't correspond to injuries resulting from some of the boy's games. As the evidence of physical aggression was clear, the paramedics decided to call the police who, as soon as they arrived at the scene, arrested Maria and Vladimir in the act. The police officers even noticed that Vladimir's fingers were bruised from the several slaps he had given Sasha. According to the medical examiner's report, Sasha had more than 100 impact marks on her body, all of which occurred within the last few days. Also, according to this report, Sasha had several cracked and broken bones, and the cause of her death was due to blunt trauma combined with internal bleeding in her body and also under the membrane of her brain. With Maria and Vladimir arrested, authorities began an investigation. In testimony, Vladimir would have given controversial versions, ranging from Sasha having had an accident after falling down the stairs and having injured herself while playing. Vladimir went on like this for hours, trying to convince the police that what had happened to the boy was an accident. However, when he was confronted with all the evidence that the police had collected, he saw that there was no point in lying anymore and confessed that he assaulted Sasha. He even tried to justify himself by saying that he had had an outburst of anger due to the boy's disobedience, and that he had no idea that the blows he had given him could cause his death. Maria, in her testimony, said that she did not attack her son in those last 4 days, but she did not deny that she knew the risks her son was taking. However, in her mind, the fact that she was negligent, denying help to her own son, and letting him be beaten until he died was not a reason for the authorities to keep her in prison, and she wanted to be released. But as everyone knows, wanting is not power, and both she and Vladimir were kept in preventive detention until the investigations were completed. During these investigations, authorities discovered that Sasha had not been enrolled in any school and had suffered almost daily abuse from his mother and stepfather since moving with them to Saratov. As soon as the media became aware of Sasha's case, the story was widely reported, causing thousands of people to become outraged. At the time, the boy's grandmother even gave an interview. Very shaken, she said that she never imagined her daughter would be capable of hurting her own son, and that if Maria no longer wanted to keep him, she could have simply taken him back to Rostov, where she would have cared for him with all the love she always had. On December 9, 2016, the date on which Sasha would have turned 8 years old, the trial of Maria Rodina and Vladimir Efimov began at the Saratov Regional Court. Alexander Dementiev, the judge responsible for the case, said during the trial that the crime was one of the cruelest he had ever seen, mainly because it involved a defenseless boy who only wanted to be loved by his mother and his new stepfather. In court, evidence was presented that showed that the only thing Maria did for her son on the days when he was attacked by Vladimir was to fill him with ointment for bruises. The couple's neighbors said that they seemed like ordinary people and that they sometimes heard the fights between Maria and Vladimir, but they never heard Sasha's screams during the attacks. This raised the hypothesis that perhaps the boy was gagged every time he was beaten, since the intensity of the attacks was high and it would be impossible for him not to scream and cry in pain, especially for a boy his age. During the entire trial, neither Maria nor Vladimir showed any emotion or even a hint of regret. Ultimately, Vladimir Efimov was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to the maximum penalty for this type of crime under Russian law. He received a sentence of just 18 years, and after serving 1 year of that sentence, he would be eligible for an assessment, and if he passed that assessment, he would be eligible for parole. Maria Rodina, on the other hand, tried all the time to justify that she didn't do anything to save her son because she was afraid of Vladimir and also didn't have the money to return to her mother's house in Rostov. She also said that on one of the occasions she would have intervened and protected her son, but later as punishment, Vladimir beat her and banned her from leaving the house for a week. With these allegations, Maria tried to convince the court that she was also a victim and that she had also suffered at Vladimir's hands. However, a video showing Vladimir attacking Sasha while Maria just watched without doing anything was presented as irrefutable evidence during the trial. As a result, Maria Rodina was found guilty of mistreating her own son. However, as there was no evidence of her involvement in the attacks that led to Sasha's death, she was sentenced to just 4 years and 6 months in prison and to pay a fine of 70,000 rubles, around $700 at the current exchange rate. Well, it goes without saying that these poor sentences generated outrage among everyone who followed the case, even more so given the proportion of the crime committed. This even ended up sparking a debate in the region where the crime occurred, in which people began to discuss the need for a new penal code so that serious crimes like Sasha's would have their due punishment. According to the latest sources regarding the case, Maria Rodina would have gained her freedom in 2021. Vladimir Efimov, on the other hand, remains in prison, and if he serves his entire sentence, he will only be released in 2035.